It's that time again for the assault on your ears we call Lord Dorks, a Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. Tonight, on our screens, is Soft Candlelight to read fine literature by. Joining myself and my ever-present co-host Stavros is Chris Fenoglio. He illustrates, he draws, he colors, but does he make julienne fries?
What does that mean?
It's a type of fry. It's julienne
They're like
fries.
those really thin ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, to answer your question, no. Aw, man.
Well, then why are you here, man? I wanted fries, damn it.
Welcome, Chris. I think you're here for a reason, I think.
Allegedly.
And we're off to a good start. Oh, man, this is exactly what you told me not to do before the show started.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Let's talk about what we're drinking.
Yes.
First off, let's talk about what we're actually doing this episode. It will make more sense when we get to the drink.
Yeah, should probably have context here.
Yeah, there really is. We are going to be talking about the Lower Decks comic miniseries from IDW. And to that end, Aaron and I are drinking a novelty cocktail that we found online. Totally legit. It's called the Vampire Blood Cocktail. It has vodka, grenadine, and ginger ale in it. You put it all in a shaker and you mix it and you pour it into a glass. And Chris, what are you drinking?
Just a glass of cheap red wine that I got at Trader Joe's.
The red wine also fits the vampire theme pretty good, which we'll get into.
I just wanted to go like color-wise, like at least something. I had a beer earlier, but it was like a Misfits beer, like novelty Misfits, like the band beer. I was like, that's not going to work.
You're probably smart not to go with the novelty cocktail, but
yeah. I guess in the comics too, they were drinking daiquiris, so we could have done that.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Or daiquiris.
Opportunity lost.
Alas.
But you know what? This cocktail, you know what? Pretty good. The grenadine gives it the blood red color.
Yeah,
which is thematic, obviously. I don't know why it says to shake the ginger ale in the shaker. That was a mistake. But it tastes good. So
I guess I skipped that step. I just poured it all into a drink or into a cup, and I'm pretty lazy as it is. So yeah, it's pretty good though. I mean,
did either of you try it with the pennies? The thing said add pennies. If you did you clean the pennies before you put them in your drink?
If you want to give it the coppery blood taste, you could always put clean
I'm
pennies
not on
in there.
board for that. I'm skipping the pennies. Sorry, guys. I don't like the taste of blood. Not a fan.
Yeah. You don't want to simulate drinking blood, but that's crazy.
I mean, I guess it is crazy if, you're a normal baseline human over here doing things that normal non-cannibals do.
Yeah, indeed.
I bet Army Hammer adds the pennies in every time.
Amazing.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, should we talk about the comic in question here?
The comics, there's 3 of them. It's a 3-issue limited run.
The miniseries, yes, the 3-issue run. But yeah, so a little bit of background here. It's a 3-issue miniseries from IDW. Came out in September, October, and November 2022. Illustrated by Chris. Thanks, Chris. That's I really like the fact that we have a Lower Decks comic to actually talk about. So you deserve all of the credit.
I don't know about that, but I'm glad that they pinned me to do it.
Tell us a little bit more about your portfolio. What do you know for? Obviously, you've done this, but you have a lot of stuff under your belt.
So Lower Decks is probably the biggest thing I've done so far, and but I've done a little bit of Star Wars stuff. IDW, back when they had the license, did the Vader's Castle series, so I did 2 of those issues. I've done 2 Goosebumps miniseries. I did an X-Files Origins miniseries where it was like Mulder and Scully when they were 13.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I did that book. And then I did a Hello Neighbor. Do you guys play video games at all?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I don't. So, but it's apparently an indie video game thing. And I did a graphic novel for that for Scholastic and
nice.
Other little odds and ends, those things. But yeah, those are the big, like, heavy hitter ones probably.
Nice. You've definitely done licensed work. The whole doing licensed work is you're not a stranger to that.
No, I've done quite a bit of licensed work.
Awesome. And then the comics were written by Ryan North. And that man, I was looking at his Wikipedia, and that man has done quite a lot of writing.
Yeah.
He's done dinosaur comics, a webcomic. He's done Adventure Time, Marvel. He's written short stories and books. He has a lot of writing credits.
So one little thing that I noticed in your notes, Stavros, papers on computational linguistics?
Yeah, it's a diverse portfolio.
Jeez, yeah, I mean, a little out of our intellectual league right there.
Yeah, I don't think I'm the right guest.
Yes.
Don't say that. It's good.
Wait, is that something Ryan wrote or something?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Dude, that totally tracks. But okay.
Maybe you should tell us a little bit about your relationship with Ryan, because straight up, we're gonna at least, I don't know about Aaron, but at least for myself, I pretty much never read comics. It's one of those like weird like nerd areas that I just never got into for whatever reason. So I know practically nothing about comics. I'm here for Lower Decks. I know, Aaron, are you like a comic book kind of guy?
Kind of. Like I've gone through off and on reading cycles. Like I read comics was real young. I kind of got back into them when Marvel was doing the Ultimate Marvel line when they first started that out. And that kind of got me back into it. I've always been a big fan of Warren Ellis as an author. And so I've read a lot of his stuff. But like, I'm not one of these guys who's, I can tell you every issue of, Spider-Man or,
Right.
Has collected every trade paperback of X-Men or whatever. I'm just like an all over the place kind of guy. And I do more graphic novels than I do the actual weeklies.
Got it. So Chris, I mean, we are sort of noobs when it comes to this area. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in your interactions with Ryan when it came to drawing up this comic?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the way that comics kind of work is that you're hired. Like Ryan didn't like reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I don't know you, but let's work on a comic together."
Right.
You're hired through an editor, right? And so I had worked with this editor, Heather. Where's my brain not working anymore?
Welcome to the show,
anyway, Heather. No,
Heather Antos, is that her name?
Heather Antos. God, why is my brain not working right now?
Yeah.
Heather Antos. I worked with her on one of those Star Wars comics, and she kind of put out we were friendly, and I kind of knew her a little bit, but then like she put out a call on Twitter. She was like, "Does anybody want to work on Trek comics?"
Oh.
Like, I want to work on Trek comics. I like Star Trek, and so she was like, "Oh, okay, great. Send me some samples." And I generally have like a pretty cartoony style, which is why I've done so many kids things. But I tried to play it straight, and I did samples of like Michael Burnham from Discovery and Saru from Discovery and Picard and Cisco, and they were a little more realistic than my normal stuff. And I sent them to her. She's like, "Oh, these are really great." I was like, "Hey, thanks. If you guys ever want to do a Lower Decks comic," because I was a big fan of Lower Decks, or am a big fan of Lower Decks. If you guys ever want to do a Lower Decks comic, can you please let me try out? And she was like, "Hey, why don't you do a couple more samples for me?" And so I did Mariner and Boimler. And if you want to see them, I think it's all on my Instagram somewhere. And then, like she was like, "Hey, I like this stuff. I'm going to, kind of push for you to be the artist. And by the way, the writer is Ryan North." And I knew of Ryan because he wrote Squirrel Girl for Marvel, which was like a really, really giant book.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh my God, that's actually like, that's bona fides. Like that's a big deal." And, it turned out that the licensors and Trek and everybody kind of signed off on it. And so that's kind of how I got involved. I'd been kind of campaigning for it for a while. Like there was an editor who had the Trek books before Heather, and like Heather took over around after season 2 came out or something. But like when season 1 came out, I wrote this guy because I knew him from working on Goosebumps and stuff, and I was like, "Hey, if you guys ever do a Lower Decks comic, I don't imagine that you'll ever hire me for it, but let me try out. At least let me try out." And at the time, he was like, "Hey, we're not really thinking about it or anything." Like, all right, fine. And like,
did you push it then?
No. Usually I take things at face value.
Okay.
Once you it's kind of like asking a lot just to do that, but
Sure.
I'm a little bit shameless when it comes to things like this.
You got to be.
Yeah,
sometimes.
shoot for the moon, man.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, my whole thing is just like, well, I'll either get the gig or they'll never talk to me again, and
Right.
what if I got to lose? And so, but usually, like, editors are really cool, and like when you have friendly relations with them, as long as you're not like super pushy and annoying all the time, like they'll generally give you like the benefit of the doubt. If you like just kind of show up and you're like, hey, if you ever do this thing, let me try out or something. As long as you're not like insisting on it or something crazy, messaging them every other day,
right,
several times a day, every hour or something.
Pushy, but not too pushy.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking. There is something wrong with harassing.
Right. There's a fine line in there somewhere.
It's only wrong if you don't get your way.
But yeah, so that's sort of how it happened. And then, I got the outline, basically, which is just like a one-page, like, here's what's going to happen in the story. This happens and it kind of outlines the whole series. And just from the outline, I was just like, oh, this guy gets it. Like, he gets the series. Like, he gets the trekkiness of it. He gets, like, the jokiness of it. Like, he just understands that tone.
Right.
Yeah, because the tone was really spot on. Like, even in, like, the, like, dialogue writing, I mean, one of the things that, like, a lot of people don't talk about in writing is giving characters voices. And you cannot read the dialogue he's written and not read it in the voice actor's voice. I mean, it's spot on. Just their cadences, their, method of speaking, the verbiage they use. Really was well put together. I was very surprised by that.
But, I mean, even just Lower Decks in general, like, one of the things that drew me to the show, like, when I first saw the first promo or whatever, the first, like, little clip, like, I was kind of like, meh, okay. It was the one where, like, at the beginning of episode 1, where Mariner has the batleth and, like, chops into Boimler's leg.
I had the exact same reaction.
I guess.
Yeah.
I was like, it's fine. And then, like, I saw the first episode and, like, the first couple episodes, and I was like, oh, no, like, this is not, like, because I knew the people who were making it were somehow associated with, like, Rick and Morty and stuff.
Right.
And I was just like, this is not cynical take on it. They're not like making fun of people who like Star Trek. Like, these people really like Star Trek, and the show is very much a Trek show.
Oh yeah.
It's just they're poking fun at some of the sillier elements, which there's a lot of, but like they're doing it in a way where it's not like cynical, and it's, there's a reverence to it. Like, they're like, this is really silly, but it's okay.
It's canon, right? It's still in there, even though it's silly.
Well, it's like, like laughing at you versus laughing with you.
Oh, sure.
And I feel like the show is laughing with you. There's a lot of heart to it, too.
In the series, too, there's an underlying, like, Starfleet at its best feeling, right? Yeah, there's problems. Yeah, they're poking fun at things. But it's still like this idealistic view of the future. It's not like, oh, these lower deck guys are the, washed up slubs of the fleet. No, they're still these, evolved humans trying to do their best. And I really think that was fantastic. I went in expecting to hate this series, and it's my favorite of the modern Trek. Yeah.
And they all of them really care and believe in what Starfleet sort of represents. And like they all like really care about each other. Like, there's a depth to the characters that have just not been there. It could have been very easily turned into Family Guy run through a Star Trek filter. It's not that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was expecting.
That was what I was expecting too. I was like, this is just going to be like a joke machine. They're just going to be like.
It's that first ad that came out was really turned people off, and it's so funny. You're talking about, like, I had literally the same reaction, and now
I think we all had that reaction to the initial ad campaigns. But it's one of those where I'm willing to bet that that ad campaign was not targeted at us. We were going to watch it no matter what the advertising said. They could have put up Star Trek Lower Decks, and it's like 3 minutes of a guy talking about nonsense while there's a picture of poop on the screen, and we're like, well, it's Star Trek, so I'm gonna watch it anyways, but I'm not happy about it.
That's awesome. I want to actually go into a little bit more detail about the art style that you use. So, I mean, as you mentioned, you've done a lot of licensed work before, but in this case, we're literally dealing with a property where the animation has a certain style on screen, and going through each of the issues, I mean, your art is just spot on with the style that they use on the show. So, how is that accomplished? What did that take?
I mean, a lot of it is just a lot of a reference for kind of everything. Like, I basically have the, Lower Decks screen cap websites sort of bookmarked everywhere. So if they, for example, if they call out a specific location or something, I'll go back and be like, oh, okay, I think they used that episode or something. And for most licensed comics, they'll send you maybe a couple of shots of whatever characters you're going to draw. They're like, okay, well, good luck.
Good luck. It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah.
But, a lot of times, it's kind of run through, every artist has their own sort of style, and it's kind of whatever you're drawing is sort of run through a U filter.
Sure.
Jim, you guys know who Jim Lee is, right? For example, he doesn't draw the X-Men the same way that someone else would draw the X-Men. He draws Jim Lee's version of the X-Men, Yes. And for a property like this, in my mind, I'm just like, well, it's already a really established style. It's not fair to the fans and also to the license for me to just be like, I want to draw this in Chris style. It's technically Lower Decks. So what I really was trying to do is get as much of that in the show as possible, or in the book as possible. So that included things like, the Lakar screens behind the bridge, behind Shaxs in the bridge, have very specific layout. So I rebuilt that in Illustrator and would pull that into shots. I learned how to make 3D models, because the way that the ships are shown in the show is they turn into 3D models. And so made 3D models and painted over them in order to try and get that look as close as possible. Things like that. And the Lower Decks team was really great, because they actually sent me a ton of stuff. They sent me turnarounds for all the bridge crew and all the lower deckers. They sent me a 3D model of the Cerritos, and pretty much anything that I asked for. They'd be like, yeah, here's the assets we have for it, just so you can get the look right.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to actually ask about the ships in particular, because I think if there's any, I don't want to say divergence, but if there's anything a unique part of the art style, it's the exterior shots. So, you've got the Qvanti planet and the exterior shots of the ship, and even the Qvanti ships and whatnot. Did you kind of have, I mean, you say you built 3D models to use. That seems like quite an achievement, because they are pretty accurate.
Well, the Cerritos one was something that they gave me. But the one that they gave me was so detailed that I couldn't import it into the program that I was using to draw to be able to really use it. So I had to break it down a little bit in order to be able to use it. And so basically what it was is I'd import in the 3D model, and then from there I would convert it into lines and tones basically, and then basically paint over top of it. So I got it as close as I could, but I mean, yeah, you're right. It doesn't quite look like the show, because I have a whole team of animators, and I'm just one dude at my laptop.
Honestly, though,
yeah, of course.
From viewing the artwork in the comics, it was always very solid. It's obviously not the animation from the show, but one of the things that I pick up a lot on when reading comics is that there are a lot of artists who, I don't want to say they're lazy, because there's so much that goes into putting a weekly comic together, but there's tons of little details, use of lighting and direction, and just, subtle hints, right, of tone changes that really bring a scene to life. And I think especially with an art style like you see in Lower Decks, it's very easy to just not put those details in. But that was one thing that I really enjoyed, is that it's very well illustrated, and even little facial expression changes. In my notes, I have one comment about Shaxs' face when Captain Freeman tells him to unleash the beast. It's just fantastic. And there's
Amazing.
tons of stuff like that, like
Yeah.
that scene at night where, you know, they're getting ready to burn the crew. You can see like the fire reflections off of their, you know, forms. And it's just really well done. And I always kind of wonder, you know, how much detail and how much instruction are you given when they're, you know, putting this story together?
In terms of the art stuff, not really that much. I mean, it goes through different layers of approval. And so it'll go to my editor, obviously, who submits it to Trek, who will approve it. And then it goes to Mike McMahon, who is the showrunner for Lower Decks, who will also approve it. And there was like one or two little things that he kind of was like, yeah, this looks a little weird or something like that. But in general, they didn't really tell me to do much with it. It was all kind of like me going back and rewatching episodes and looking at the screen caps and just kind of being like, okay, well, when they lit this thing, it's kind of similar to this, and this is how they did it, so I'm going to try and do it like that sort of stuff.
So that then leads into, you know, my first grilling here for you.
Oh.
Why the TOS Catullan ship and not the TOS remastered one?
Catullan ship? The space hippies,
the space
right?
hippies. In the original release, it was just that modified Tholian ship. But in the remastered, it's actually its own ship design.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, I'll be honest.
Admit it, you didn't know there was a remastered version.
I did know that, actually. So Ryan includes, sometimes when it's something specific like that, I've watched a lot of Star Trek. I've watched like all of TNG, all of Voyager, all of DS9, all of Enterprise, you know, everything up to date, except for the original series. I haven't seen all the episodes of the original series because it's just really hard to go backwards sometimes.
The original series is very rough. There's like 4 seasons, and maybe 2 episodes a season that are real high quality.
Yeah, like there's some really great stuff in there, and then there's ones where they're like, we're going to go to a planet full of gangsters, and I'm like, this kind of reeks of like, we didn't have the budget to make aliens this week.
Reuse the props from 2 studios down or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. But so I did know that there was a remastered version. I did the best that I could to look it up. I looked on there's a website called like TrekCore or something like that, which is like basically a Star Trek wiki.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had a version of it. But if I remember correctly, it actually said in the script, this is their ship. I think he included a picture of it or something, but updated slightly because it's in the 24th century versus, you know, during Kirk times. So that's why it looks a little bit different. I was like, well, they might be hippies, but you know, maybe they're slightly staying on top of. They're not Amish. They're slightly on top of the technology.
Are some of the characters like straight up pulled from the original series episode? Like, there's the blonde lady with the side tail that looks very familiar.
Yep, all of them, and that's actually in the script too. It's like these are the sons and daughters of the people that went on the Enterprise.
Of course they are.
And I think that was mostly done to make them recognizable.
Makes sense.
You know, because he could have just been like, these are the Tholians, and no one's going to really know what he's talking about.
Sure.
You know, but if he like made them look like those, well, I made them look like that. If he told me to make them look like those people, then readers will look at it and be like, oh yeah, I remember that episode. I saw it once.
Right.
Something like that.
You know, I'm going to get a little off topic here, even though it's my job to keep us on track. But speaking of Catullans,
oh no, your fan theory.
This is my theory that got torpedoed.
Yeah, I got torpedoed because it was dumb. Dumb.
You know, just to clue you in, Chris. So one of the only canon races that has purple hair is one of the Catullans. So I had a theory going for a while that Boimler was actually partially Catullan. But, you know, at this point, Boimler's called himself human, and Catullans have straight up shown up in the comic. So I just, you know, was feeling a little sad that my whole Catullan theory got torpedoed. So.
Well, one, he's from Modesto.
Yeah. Well, he could still be part Catullan.
In season 3, he talks about, like, there's a like off the cuff comment where he talks about having purple hair dye.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It's all torpedoed.
Stavros was just broken, man. When that happened, it was over for him. He get out of bed for weeks, crying all the time.
I know. It was really sad. rage tweeting Mike McMahon, asking him what was going on, and don't reply. And no, I didn't do
listening to
that.
The Cure on repeat.
I'm still holding out hope, though, that Boimler dyes his hair from one shade of purple to another. That's my hope.
Anyway, back to art for a second. I really wanted to talk about the tease of the cover art on issue 2 with Boimler. Back to Boimler, him being the vampire lord there on issue 2, which doesn't happen. Boimler's completely fine through the entire. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, because we are going to talk about the plot, but just a bit of a tease there on the issue 2 cover.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's that far off the mark, the cover. I mean...
Are you saying like he metaphorically drains the crew of his blood or something like that?
I mean...
I don't know. Do you feel like... I don't know. What's your... Did you go in there saying like, I'm going to, I got a trick to pull here? Or what was your MO going into that art?
No, I just need to sell a book.
That's too easy. It's a good answer.
It was just like a striking image that kind of came to my head, and I was like, oh yeah. Well, part of it was like, again, I read the script and the outline and stuff. So the way that comics work is you do the covers usually before you get the script in, just because of ordering and all these other bureaucratic dumb things that aren't really interesting in a podcast form.
Okay.
But before I started issue 2, I had already done that cover, like several weeks ahead. And I knew the story and I knew that Boimler was going to become really enamored with Dracula, and the cape joke, which is by far my favorite joke in the entire series, by the way.
That's good.
I knew that was going in. And so I was like, okay, well, this is how we can kind of sell it, is like, make it kind of spooky Boimler wearing a cape, or becoming
right.
a vampire and wearing a cape. And the other thing is that issue came out in October, if I remember correctly, so it has a bit of a Halloween theme to it.
I mean, there is Dracula, so I feel like the entire miniseries could arguably be Halloween, but yeah, I could definitely see that.
There was another cover thumbnail I did. I tweeted it out a while ago, but it was like basically Mariner drinking Boimler's blood. Like she was the vampire and he was like the victim.
Okay.
That was another thought. Like I just kind of had to work in vampire in there somehow and make it somehow compelling, to where somebody would walk by it on the shelf and be like, wow, what is this?
That makes sense.
What? You're saying you're doing this for money? How dare you?
I know. So disappointed.
Effing capitalists.
I know.
Deep inside all of us, there's a little bit of Ferengi, all right?
Yeah. a little vampire buys food and pays for rent. You know what? I think it's okay.
So one of the things that they did is in the last issue, like the very last, it's not a stinger. It's just like a joke page at the end. They put Badgie in the chair.
Yes, I was going to talk about that.
Like they basically took out Boimler and put Badgie in the chair. And they sent it to me, and I was like, this is hysterical. But Boimler has to be in the bodies.
Yeah, I saw him get at it. That was amazing.
And so I went back in, added Boimler, and sent it back to them. And I was like, here, he has to be in there. So
another artist somewhere put in Badgie, and you stuck Boimler back in there?
Yeah,
went down?
I don't know who it was. I think it was someone on their design team. So IDW, which is the company that publishes it, the Lower Decks comics, they have their own. Usually in comics, you will subcontract in a letterer, but they have their own lettering department, and they're the same people who do like the layouts of the books and stuff and get it ready for print and things like that. And I think somebody in their office did it and went uncredited for it. I offered to redraw Badgie, but I was like, I mean, it looks fine.
It looks good, yeah.
It looks great, yeah. So, like, there's no reason for me. The only reason I would do this is out of pride, and like, I'm just not that cool, man.
No, it's probably it's the most striking art, I would say, of the entire miniseries. So the Badgie in particular, like a little bit like the Boimler on the chair, a little bit goofy. It's funny, but also he's a vampire. But like Badgie on there, I was like, ooh, this is a little too.
I'm so glad that I did not draw the most striking art in the entire.
You did 95%.
Taking him down a notch, Stavros.
90 pages and 3 covers for this thing.
You did 95% of the art. Don't sell yourself short there. That's good.
Yeah. I'm so happy. I'm happy I agreed to this.
Oh, way to go, Stavros.
Oh, sad. I know, I did it.
No, this was going to be just like a pride assassination, confidence assassination.
That's right.
I mean, if we're talking about art direction decisions, whose decision was it to bring back the skant?
Mine.
Yeah, there you go.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that was like, I guess that I forget the name. I'm sorry, the name of that nurse.
Tanowski, I think, is his
Tanowski,
name.
something like that. Yeah. I guess they mention it off the cuff in the series, like the actual show. And Ryan was like, "Well, why don't we actually show this person on screen or on in the comic, and then maybe he can migrate into the show someday or something." I don't know. I literally have no idea what's going on with the show. Like, they don't tell me anything. And I was like, oh, okay. So I basically get to design a character. And I was like thinking about it, and I was like, why don't we just bring back a skant? Like, I mean, that feels like it's super in the tone for Lower Decks to just have someone in a skant.
Yeah, I think they referenced the skant in Lower Decks too.
I
can't remember where it was.
I think it was when it was like episode 2. Again, I've rewatched all these like a million times. When they're taking the Klingon ambassador to that meeting or whatever, and Boimler is like all dressed up and he's like in a skant uniform. Like, skants are cool or whatever it is. I think that's it, right?
God, that might be it.
Sounds familiar. It's got to be in there.
Yeah,
he's wearing like the early TNG dress uniform, but yeah.
But he's wearing like the TNG dress skants. He's not wearing like the TNG like background dude just walking through the scene skants.
Yes.
Right.
And I was like, no, I want to bring back the skants. I want to bring back the crewman skants. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll put it in there. Why not? And especially like Discovery and stuff has been exploring new ideas and like gender identity and things like that. And I was like, why not? Let's throw it in there. It sounds good. So
really great inclusion. And which begs the question, is the Lower Decks skant uniform now canon?
In Star Trek, none of the expanded material has ever been canon.
I mean, technically, I think this is all supposed to be canon. Will they use my design? I couldn't tell you.
Sure. To be fair, though, there's only so many things you can do with a skant.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the video games, like the computer game or something, you were able to like play, like put your character in a skant if you wanted to, way before I did this. So I don't know. I shouldn't be given too much credit, but I was just like, it'd be fun to have someone in a skant because Star Trek, the Next Generation came out in 87 or something? And like, it was like the first 2 episodes or something. They just had dudes in the background in skants before they were like, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. I'm like, man, times have changed.
To be fair, the skants just kind of went away altogether. Like, nobody was wearing them most of the time except Troy.
I think, they brought Troy in, but they were like, it wasn't women wearing the skants. It was dudes wearing the skants.
That's right.
And I was like, no, they're trying to explore something, but I feel like someone got cold feet. Someone was just like, we cannot do this on network television. They're probably right for 1987, but I mean, it's 2023. Well, 2022 when I was doing it, but we can do that now. It's cool.
Yeah. Got to see the animated version of Tanowski. I think it needs to happen.
Bring him in.
Let's start some kind of petition or online petition.
I will. This is me holding my breath.
Make it happen, Stavros.
Yeah, we're gonna make it happen. But speaking of like little fun details, I hope it's intentional when Tanowski Ransom's like, get out of here, Tanowski, I'm fine, and like Tanowski's like all salty walking away from Ransom. One of my favorite little details of the entire series.
I don't remember if that was in the script or not, but I figured he'd be upset.
Either way,
I figured Tanowski would be annoyed by that.
He's there to help, right? Like, what the heck, man? He's just trying to heal your bruise. Anyway, shall we jump into the plot discussion?
Are we going to discuss the plot? Is that what we're doing?
Time. I think so. I think there's a story. We should probably talk about it.
Okay. Well, tell us all about it, Stavros. As we all know, I'm illiterate. I just like the pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't read it, so I don't
okay.
know.
Well, you know what? Now I get to fill you in because when we do this show for the TV show, I will give a little plot synopsis, so you can actually help critique my summary here.
Okay.
So here goes. When the Cerritos is ordered to make second contact on the remote planet of Qvanti, things get complicated when the away team makes contact with the wrong sect. Meanwhile, Qvanti's unusual atmospheric disturbances cause a classic holodeck kerfuffle when the Warp Core 4 accidentally make a public domain Dracula sentient. Both are resolved when Dracula is revealed to not be a bad guy, and he helps expose the Qvanti plot to manipulate their way into keeping Federation membership. How'd they do?
Yeah, it's missing like some big stuff, but yeah.
Well, it's supposed to be a quick paragraph-long synopsis. So I gotta say, I love the plot of the sentient holodeck character, and he's just kind of chill, right? Like, wait, yeah,
He's fine.
and I love the reveal that there's a whole like school for sentient holodeck characters,
which is also now
if we don't
canon,
ever
by the
get
way.
to see that again, I'm gonna be very displeased.
I was writing Ryan about something in something else, and I was like, please don't make me draw, because at one point they talk about like Sherlock Holmes kissing a Cthulhu
Wait, you
or something.
don't want to
like,
draw that?
please?
Man, that would be all like, hey, when are we doing this scene? Hey, I know it says this just gets referenced, but can I draw a full page splash? Come on, man.
I was like, please don't make me draw this.
It's out there. It's already out there. This comic's been out for a month. Someone's drawn it for sure.
I was just like, there's no way I'm going to do that justice to whatever is in your head right now, whatever you're thinking that looks like. It's not good. I promise. But,
that was great.
That whole Dracula storyline, like when I was talking about earlier, like understanding the tone of the show, like that's really what kind of got me into it. Is I was like, it would have been very easy to just make Dracula a bad guy, and like they have to, bang bang, shoot him up or do whatever to get rid of him. But that's not how they resolve it. Like they resolve it in a way that's actually kind of pathetic and thoughtful. And I was like, no, that's Star Trek right there. That's why I like the show. Like,
although I do wonder why does holographic Dracula need real blood? Wouldn't he need like holographic blood?
Well, first they replicate blood, right? And then
because it tastes better, right?
He doesn't need it. It just tastes better. Yeah.
Ah.
So he wants it. And then, like, they were like, well, we can just take that out. Like, he doesn't have to have blood at all. He's a hologram. You just say, hey, we'll just take that bit of your program out. But he was like, no, I want it in. I want to be a vampire.
You don't understand. A core piece of my identity is that I drink blood. You can't change it without changing me.
And then they were like, but rather than treating that like, he's a bad guy who's trying to kill everyone, they treat it like it's a medical condition and we have a way to be able to give him what he needs.
I also love his creepy talking about how good Tendy's blood tastes. Oh, man.
It's all right.
That was such fantastic writing on that part. Very creepy.
I was not in the room for that one.
Well, let's see. I mean, I think the key part of the plot is the so-called Federation do-over, which I love that it has that name now, and it completely makes sense that it's because it is a recurring plot in Star Trek, is giving people a second chance, and the fact that it works so well and that Dracula is turned around so quickly is amazing.
Again, that's all Ryan.
So I do wonder, though,
of course,
who was the impetus behind the more Vincent Price style Dracula versus the other portrayals we've seen?
I don't remember. I think I was kind of thinking like Bela Lugosi Dracula.
Oh yeah,
or
Bela Lugosi.
like that.
Yeah, I see that.
Because I think it said something about like kind of the Hollywood movie version of him or something, but I don't know. I wanted him to be something because, again, like in the story, he turns out to be like this kind of okay dude. And if I made him look like Nosferatu or something, like that's going to be a little strange.
It would have been hilarious, is what it would have been.
Well, it's just like that's a very specific look, and it's hard to make him go through all the emotions and emote the way that like a more regular looking Dracula would look. Or by regular I mean like a more human looking Dracula would look. There's points in that series where he's not just, angry or scary or something. Like he's actually like kind of self-conscious, and he's actually like worried about things, and he feels, regret and all these other things. And I just don't think I could make that really come across.
The monstrous friend, the friendly monster gag is, it's a good gag, but it's hard to sustain as a part of a story where your monster is a main character.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of the visuals of it. Like,
and that's what I mean.
I just felt like
from a visual standpoint.
Yeah, I just felt like it was a more empathetic version of him.
Yeah.
It was something that you could kind of look at and be like, when Dracula's sad, you're like, oh, Dracula's sad, rather than just being like, wow, he looks really weird.
Yeah, it fits the story, I think.
Well, and plus he needed the cape, too.
Yes, the cape.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to talk about the cape.
I think we really do. Is it, I assume intentional, because the cape is its own emoting machine in a lot of the Dracula scenes. It's clear that like the Boimler cape is different than the Dracula cape, right? Like that was a conscious decision to kind of make it more pronounced, more accented with Boimler.
Sure.
Or am I totally misreading it?
I mean, I wanted the capes to be the same cape, but I think what you're reacting to is just like Dracula wears a cape every day. To him, it's not a novelty. It's just the style of the time. And he's just like, yeah, I'm wearing a cape. To Boimler, it's brand new. This is a brand new,
right.
This is a brand new car to him. And he's just like showing it off every chance that he gets. And so that's sort of the joke, is just like super like this new accessory that he's kind of building his identity around, or rebuilding his identity around, is just so ridiculous. But he doesn't see that it's ridiculous, so he's just kind of showing it off and like being really extravagant with it. In terms of like design, I just wanted them to be the same cape.
I was thinking it had to, like, I felt like I don't know if you call it a collar or the part that comes up around.
We'll call it a collar, because I have no idea what it's called.
That part of the cape, it felt like it went higher on Boimler's head than Dracula, but it could just be the fact that that he is kind of really.
If you spot other inconsistencies in my art, can you just kind of keep them to yourself?
Hey, I was here thinking it was he purposefully replicated a cape.
That is exactly
collar,
what happened.
Maybe we'll go with that.
Exactly what happened.
But my real question is, when you got the script and there was a whole bit about Boimler, getting a cape of his own, was there a moment where you're just like, son of a bitch, now I have to draw 2 capes?
No, the joke was so good. I was just like, I loved every second drawing those capes. Sometimes it's very rare that I like laugh when I'm like reading scripts and stuff. That joke to me was just so good, and the fact that from the second he puts it on, he has it until the very last page, and the way that he takes it off, the way that he ends up like ditching it. It's just perfect. It's like so in character, and it's so funny. I don't know. It's just like my favorite joke in the entire thing.
I like how the captain has to call him out on it. That was the. I thought he was for sure going to work it into like a religious exemption or something into the uniform, just so he could wear it the whole time.
No, but that's not Boimler though. Boimler, like,
that's true.
Is a character. He lives and dies by what the bridge crew and the captain says. And so if the captain lightly ribs him about wearing a cape, he's just going to be like, I'm taking it off right now.
I love how like browbeaten he is in that scene. It's just fantastic.
To Carol, it was just like, oh, that's cute. You have a cape. And to him, he's just like mortified now. And I'm just like, oh, that's so perfect. That's so good.
Yeah, it was really great. I feel like Boimler, going off on a whole Boimler tangent at the moment, but like Boimler is so key to the entire plot just by in that 1 or 2 panels in, I think, issue 3, where he just completely diffuses the entire plot by just being like, yeah, you want some blood? Okay. And like that's how he diffuses the entire plot. which is amazing.
Yeah, and again, that's like a like I feel like if Starfleet were real, that is a solution they would come up with for Dracula. They'd be like, "Oh, he just needs blood. Well, we can give him blood, and we'll just take it out of our veins and
We
just
got
give
lots
it
of
to him.
blood.
That's
We
not a
got some blood
problem."
to spare.
There's like 600 people on the ship. I mean, we all give a little bit. He has a lot. Not a problem. You know?
Yeah. He doesn't need to do the actual biting. The whole biting thing is completely superfluous. It's just
Still bothers me that Hollow Dracula needs real blood.
We've been over this. It tastes better.
Doesn't need it.
He wants it.
Craves it. That's all.
He wants it. Yeah.
But you know what? I guess that's what happens when you have a near sentient AI computer core doing random things with your holodeck characters.
That's true. I want to go back to the Qvanti plot for a second, though. So as Chris, as you pointed out, very briefly and generally went over the plot for the Qvanti, I want to ask you guys, and maybe this is more for Aaron because he's just reading it for the first time, like me. Like, do you feel like the Qvanti ruse would have worked if they had successly destroyed the Cerritos?
No.
Like, so their plot again was to destroy the Cerritos and pretend that they got destroyed in the atmosphere and what have you.
The problem with that whole plot line is that Starfleet would have sent another ship, and they would have investigated what happened to the Cerritos. And there's going to be evidence. You can't blow up a ship and then say, "Oh yeah, atmospheric conditions." Like, that's not how that works. Yeah,
there's weapons and.
Well, I mean, two things on that. One of them is like the conceit is that the Qvanti are actually more technologically advanced than the Starfleet in certain regards. So we don't know how their weapon system functions. In fact, at one point they say something about like their shields, and it's like, well, this is like someone who had never seen how shields work, like building it or something. So basically, like, we don't know how their weapon system functions. It could very well function more similar to their atmosphere. And, I feel like they would be smart enough to kind of plant evidence to make it look like, oh, the atmosphere blew them up, something like that. I don't know. I feel like it could have worked, especially if if Starfleet didn't look too deep into it, kind of took the Qvanti at their word.
I feel like eventually there would have been a plot on another series where, like, another ship shows up after they've established them as a Federation member and discovers their dark secret. Like, it's an inevitability. There's too much info that it's happening.
Yeah, but what happens from that point depends on what series you're going off of. If you're going off of Next Generation, like, there's punishment for the Qvanti and some sort of
or like reintegration of the two cultures or something.
Something like that, or they're just gonna, somehow Starfleet is going to reprimand Qvanti because that's just the way that show works. But if you do it from Deep Space Nine point of view, they're going to be like, well, we got these really great weapons, and now we're beating the crap out of the Romulans, so ends justify the means, I guess.
Yep. And then you get Avery Brooks monologuing about how he can live with it.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Or you could get the TOS method where they just show up, upend their entire culture, and then leave and never come back.
At this point, Lower Decks has made fun of that. Oh, I guess that was TNG making fun of that, or that did that in Lower Decks.
Most of the series do that at some point.
Completely. Yeah. Be like, you guys are fine now. Goodbye.
Maybe we should start worshiping the computer again.
It's completely plausible. So speaking of the Qvanti, we do see the Yentoa, I think is how you pronounce
Something
it.
Like
is that the right,
sure.
Chris? Yentoa. So they have a castle show up in one of your panels, and Aaron is a little bit of a armchair castle buff. So
you're gonna tell me the castle was wrong?
Not at all. Well, why don't you, Chris? Do you have any? What was the inspiration for that castle? And maybe Aaron, you can.
You guys are really getting in the weeds, aren't you? Okay. So, for anyone listening who hasn't read this, the castle appears in one panel and is immediately discarded afterward. So, sure. I don't know. I looked up pictures of castles and I was like, oh, that looks good. Okay, sure. And like kind of.
A castle's a castle.
I just kind of grabbed elements that I kind of liked from different castles and I was like, all right, well, this is a castle now. I don't know. Look, this is a real deep dive into my drawing process. I look at pictures and then take elements from those pictures and then put them into my drawings.
Yeah, it's when they first land on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a castle. It's in one bit. I'm not going to go into castle architecture or why the castle is wrong or what the problems with it are.
Really,
That's Stavros' job.
You have no idea how much I appreciate you not telling me.
It's literally just generic castle architecture,
That's literally it. I was just
it's literally no worse than the castle designs on Game of Thrones.
I swear, like, if you just fed the word castle into like one of those new AI like art things, like you'd probably get something more accurate than what I drew. But I was just like, I need a castle, so this is a castle. It looks like a castle. You can look at it, identify it as a castle.
It needs to look like a castle, and it did. So mission accomplished.
I hope it served its purpose as being a castle.
Yeah, and so it did. Going back to Dracula though for a second, I do want to. Was the whole Dracula's throne looking like the Barclay machine from the Next Gen episode something that you came up with, or was that direction coming from Ryan?
No, that was from Ryan. Ryan wrote that in there.
Did you have to really study that episode to make it to replicate it?
Yeah. So like you can find screen caps for a lot of these shows online, and it's just like some nerd who just doesn't have much of a social life, I assume, going through the Blu-rays and just like, every second, like taking a picture and like putting it online. So yeah, I found that episode and just like every shot I could get of that thing, I grabbed it and tried to make it. It's a little bit off, but I mean, it's enough to where like you look at it and you're like, oh yeah,
that's
pretty
obvious to me when it came up what I was looking at.
What kind of struck me?
Good job.
It's just like the castle. It just needed to be Barclay's throne. It didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be identifiable.
Yeah, obviously.
What kind of struck me about like looking at that reference is like how cheap some of the sets on Next Gen are. Like you can kind of see it's like fluorescent tape under a black light. I'm just like, oh, I thought this was a lot more put together. I could make this. I could do this in my garage.
It's early 90s sci-fi sets, man. That's how they rolled.
I think a part of why, like, everybody's like, oh, your memory plays tricks on you. But I also think it's like, we were watching this stuff on low-res TVs, right? Like, it's like when you go back and play, like, Nintendo games on modern TVs, just how terrible they look. But back in the day, all the TVs were blurry, so you could get away with that sort of thing.
So I read a thing where like the set designer, you know how all the doors have like little markings and like words on it and stuff?
You're not supposed to be able to see them.
And stuff in there because he was like, the resolution's so bad, no one's ever going to be able to read it. Right. And, 40 years later, he didn't know some nerds were going to like... Yeah, just like stare at the stupid laser discs for hours on end.
Well, it's also one of those weird things where, like, you've watched something, like, 2 or 3 times, and, like, on, like, the third watch, all of a sudden you're like, what the hell is that? And you stop it, and you're like, okay, I'm going to zoom in on this. I think that is how a lot of this stuff gets found.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, like, some of it is just... So, not to move over to Star Wars on a Star Trek podcast, but that shot in original New Hope where like the stormtrooper is walking through the door and like bumps his head on the door.
Oh yeah,
I probably watched that movie 30 times before I saw that. Never saw it until someone was like, "Oh yeah, stormtrooper bumps his head on the door," and then I was like looking for it, and I was like, "Oh my god, he really does!"
Well, that's it because you're focused on the action of the scene, right? And the action of the scene is Han Solo running away, and it's real quick, and it just happens, and it's done. But I think that's with like any IP that you produce enough stuff. It's funny. I have a buddy who works in marketing, and he's always going on about. Oh no, everything is planned. Everything happens for a reason in these productions. They put so much time and so much money. And I'm like, dude, no. Everything is so complicated. Stuff just slips through sometimes. The stormtrooper hitting his head was not planned.
Yeah. No. And it's just, I mean, I don't have this experience on a movie end, but like on a drawing end, making a comic end, I mean, sometimes you're just pressed for time and, you know, you just forget something or like something sneaks its way in and you're like, oh, I forgot to delete that out, or I forgot to add the pips to this guy, or I forgot this, that, or the other thing.
Or it's like there's some
it
minor flaw in your artwork and, you know, you're moving through it so quickly and you get it out and you're looking at it from a distance and it looks fine, and then as soon as it goes to publish, is all you can see is that one mistake you made.
Or you're like on a podcast and someone's like, yeah, is there a reason why the collar on Boimler's cape was higher than
I know.
Dracula's?
But, you know, some podcasters are just assholes. You just got to take it. You know, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, man, there's a reason I wanted to go to sleep that night. Didn't want to fix like 12 panels of the stupid things, so I just went to sleep. I just was like, that's good enough. No one's gonna.
Hey, you know what? When the inconsistency makes for a better experience, I think we can all take that as a win. Just putting that out there.
But anyway, it's because Boimler was really happy with his cape and ordered it, like replicated it a little.
Yeah,
taller.
I'm going to come up with a different theory, and that is that having pulled the comic back up, I don't think Stavros knows what he's talking about.
Really?
Those collars are like the same width or the same height. The only reason you think they're different in some scenes is because their angle they're showing the characters from.
Oh.
Sure, that can. You know what? That can be right too.
Maybe it's like the Dracula hair too. I don't know. We're gonna go down to 8.
Although if we're talking about capes, I love the fact that Baby Dracula in the Hall of Pictures is wearing a cape.
You're welcome for that one.
I love it.
Yeah, because I think in the outline Ryan talked about Dracula turning into a. Oh no! It was issue 2 already.
Yep.
When he turns into the bat, he's still wearing the cape.
Right.
And I'm just like, he's always wearing the cape.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He always has the cape.
So was the Hall of Pictures, were those pictures something from the script, or did they just be like, yeah, create a bunch of pictures of the life of Dracula?
He wrote a couple of them in, but most of them were me. Like, he wrote, like, he's attacking the Borg and, like, 1 or 2 other ones. He wrote one where it was, like, Dracula and Khan fighting. I didn't end up drawing because I was like, oh, God, dude, I want to go to bed.
But, like...
You have to, like, all the chest detail on the Khan. That'd be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Mariner Boimler one with the baby Dracula was me. The Penguin one was me.
What is the deal with the Penguin one? What is that? Is that a reference to something?
Yeah, what's going on there?
I'm glad you drew this because I really want to know. I've like been in the weeds on this since I saw it.
So the editor, Heather, famously loves penguins. And so any chance I get, I'll sneak a penguin into something that I'm drawing for her because she just freaking loves penguins.
It's good for your career.
Sure. It's just, I think it's funny. I just think it's really funny to put penguins and stuff. I don't know. They're ridiculous. They're awesome.
I love that he's doing the whole like Lion King presenting the penguin scene.
Yeah, is the Lion King reference intentional there?
Of course. Of course. I just really hope people have that same reaction. Like, why the penguins? And just never get an answer. I hope they never listen to this and they just never get an answer to it.
Never know.
And every time they reread it, they're just like, I still get the penguins thing. And they're like rewatching Star Trek and just like, there's no penguins in Star Trek. Why does he put the penguins in here? Completely lost.
Maybe it'll be something that'll get picked up, and it'll become a part of the Star Trek design theme where there's always a penguin somewhere.
Yeah, but
I mean, like the rubber duck room.
Anyway, to get back on track, a lot of that stuff was my choice, and then I think they said something about. I think Ryan put in the script something about like a portrait of Dracula in the back, but I decided to like. It's not paint, but like digitally paint it versus like making it look like everything else because I just thought it was funny. Because like this guy would have like a really hyper detailed version of himself in the background. He is not. He doesn't look like that. And then great. I think at the end of issue 2, they published like the full image of it. So.
You're getting stuck on more details, and I may just be digging myself a deeper hole here. But you know what? I'm going for it. Is the baby Dracula? And Aaron and I were talking about this before the show. Is the Dracula hair there supposed to be a tint of purple, or is that just a detail of how the colors turned out? Like, is there some Boimler hair going on?
No,
here?
there's no Boimler hair. It's just sort of like, I didn't want. This is going to get really deep into the weeds. Okay,
That's all right.
so I didn't want the pictures to be black, like have black lines to them, because just the way art sort of works is that black and white kind of grab your eye, and when you look at Lower Deck stuff, actually there's not a lot of black in there. There's some on the Lacar screens, there's some on the outlines, but there's a lot more really dark grays or really heavy, like really dark colors. And so in order to be able to push those images back and not have them call more attention than the characters in the foreground, I made them kind of off color. And then that just kind of is what came out. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like
pretty common thing to have a slight blue or purple tint to basically black.
Yeah.
To make it stand out from your existing lining.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't meant to like imply Boimler being the father any more than Mariner and Boimler playing with a baby Dracula would imply.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was the intent of that scene, is that they're kind of his parents.
That was 100% the intent of the scene.
Well, let's move on. I want to talk a little bit more about the other characters that show up in here, because we do like seeing nice little new facets of the characters that pop up here. For Mariner, we haven't really talked about her that much. One of my favorite things actually, Aaron, you were mentioning this before too, the spread of the Cerritos like Master Systems display, where it shows Mariner going on her duty shift, like doing all the bits and pieces of her
so she can get back to the holodeck quickly. I love that 2-page spread, and all of the stuff it's showing her doing in that scene is just amazing, because you never really see that in the series. Like, all the stuff that has to be going on in the background. Even in Lower Decks, where it's Lower Decks characters, it's usually just hand-waved, where they're doing, running spanners over things. But I love the fact that, like, they show her restocking supplies in escape pods, and they show her, tightening giant nuts, right? I love it.
And then the Office Space reference with the unnamed Bill Lumbergh supervisor.
Yes,
also pretty good. Was that written into the script, or is that a inclusion that you?
The design. So that character was obviously written into the script, but the design was. I think he said he was drinking a coffee cup or something. I was like, well, I know a guy who likes coffee. So yeah, he was kind of written in, or I designed him to look like that. Yeah, all of that, most of that stuff was written in the script. But I got to tell you, there's a big difference between something being written in the script and actually having to draw it. You know how hard those 2 pages were? Oh my god!
Were you using a reference? I don't know if we've seen a MSD that looks quite like the one that's on that spread.
Using a reference, but it is like they sent me the reference for it. I think Ryan had it, but I didn't copy and paste it. It was like I rebuilt it in Illustrator. So like most of the stuff that you see there, especially backgrounds and things like that, a lot of it is just redrawn or rebuilt some way, shape, or form. So, like, what's another one? There's a point where they're in a lab, and they're figuring out, or they're trying to figure out how to get through the Qvanti shields. And, like, that's actually a shot from one of the episodes. Like, the first shot of that lab is from one of the episodes. And I just basically traced it and then left out certain elements and drew in different elements. But that was pretty rare, actually. A lot of the stuff is just straight drawn out.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I love that spread. It's especially good. So does the Lumbergh character mean that eyeglasses are Starfleet, their standard Starfleet issue? Well, like eyeglasses now exist?
They exist. They're in Discovery.
Oh, that's right. Man. You're totally right.
And we had this conversation on the email thread. So all of us are like me, Ryan, and the assistant. Like we're all on this email thread when we're going through this stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm putting glasses on this guy because they exist 600 years in the future. So obviously, they're a fashion choice. So yeah, he's getting glasses, and everybody was like, "All right." If there's a question,
That's the benefit of having that character.
If there's See, this is why you got to stay up on your shows, kids, because
you have to watch Discovery, if not for the fashion.
They come back to you and they're just like, "Well, they cured eye problems." You're like, "No. Look, it's 600 years in the future, and who's that? David Cronenberg or something? Like he's got glasses, so." You know what? Sorry, I'm gonna harp on this point too, because they even have a conversation about it in Discovery. They're like, "Yeah, I don't really need these glasses; they just look good," or something like that. So anyway,
they could be a fashion choice or medically required. It doesn't matter. Right. They're canon. It's in.
I appreciate
it. I love it. Okay, well, I want to talk about Rutherford because Rutherford is my boy. He's my favorite character personally.
Oh boy, it's always about Rutherford with you, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, I'm wearing my Rutherford t-shirt right now as we speak. But anyway, I love that. I was a little sad that Rutherford's kind of delegated to the background a bit in the first couple issues, but Rutherford instantly solves the mobile emitter issue that plagues sentient holograms everywhere. All it takes is a backpack.
I think we actually saw that in Voyager, right? The EMHs that are being used as miners, right. They have backpacks that I thought were holographic generators.
Oh God, it's been a long time since I did a rewatch through Voyager. I have no idea.
Still, I mean, did Milana Torres put together in like 2 seconds like Rutherford does? What a feat of engineering genius is the point I'm trying to get at right now.
Or, it's something he's done before, and we're not going to discuss why.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite part of that is? Not to ring my own bell, but it's duct taped together.
Yes, I love that
in
detail.
The 24th century.
You know what, though? Duct tape's never going to go away. We'll just get better versions.
Here was my thinking, though. Okay, you ready for this? There's no duct tape on the holodeck. He's not carrying around duct tape. He's not really carrying around anything except for like one tool. Where did the duct tape come from? I thought it's holographic duct tape that the emitter is actually putting out, and so it's actually
that is amazing.
Itself.
I accept this as the new canon.
Thank you.
Although
I appreciate it.
I do kind of wonder the design of his mobile emitter. When I first saw it, I was all like, "Why does he have an exocomp?"
Exocomp?
Yeah, that's immediately what I thought.
One's on me. That's me. And it actually looked more like one before. That was one of the art notes that Mike sent back. He was like, "It looks like an exocomp." I was like, "Gosh." So I went in.
It looks like an engineering doodad. I mean, that vaguely resembles an exocomp.
Yeah, but if you're wondering who to blame on that was me.
Oh dear! Now I've done it.
They're like, "Can you change it?" And I was like, "No, I want to go to bed."
All right. Yeah, I was happy the little Rutherford inclusion there. Quite good. I know, Aaron, you were excited about Ransom's inclusion.
I mean, Ransom makes everything better. But I do have one question. Why is Ransom working out while he's chewing out Mariner?
Because
that's script, or is that you?
That's script, but it's just what he does.
Such a weird thing.
It's just him, man. I mean, sits on yoga balls and does sit-ups.
I know. Is the yoga ball in the show, or
no? That was something Ryan added. I think that was in the script. He was like, he's sitting on one of those yoga chair balls, and I was like, sure, man, whatever you want.
Also great. And the abs through the uniform. I mean, how sizable must his ab muscles be to be visible?
I think he just has a special material for his uniform tops to make sure that to make sure that they show off his abs. I feel like that would be a Ransom thing to do.
That was great. I love this little Ransom details.
I actually got what's his name? Jerry. I forget his last name.
Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah, they got him to read that page, like on Instagram and stuff. I was super geeked out. I was like,
"Oh, really?"
Yeah.
Go find that.
So, and then I did last year. They invited me to go to New York Comic Con, and I painted a mural on the side of the IDW booth. I was chatting with
I saw that picture.
and I was chatting with one of the basically the social media people, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I was the one who got Jerry to do it." And I was like, "Jerry? Who are you talking about?" And she was like, "Oh, Jerry O'Connell, the guy who read your comic. Yeah, we're friends." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" So yeah, I was very pleased with that. I can now die, kind of happy. I'm like, someone
It's an interesting detail about his office, Ransom's office. I don't know why this is suddenly coming to my mind. So there's a ukulele in the background. Is that in the show, or is that something you added?
I added it because, one, he's from Hawaii.
Yeah, I figured that was the case.
That's true.
So it made me wonder.
And two, they only show, maybe season 3 shows it more, but they only showed like one shot, maybe 2 shots of his office. I'm telling you, I go through all these things with a fine-tooth hoover to find like these angles and stuff because I want them to be right. And they literally show his desk with like the squat rack, and then like they show one reverse angle of the door where there's a replicator by the door, but they don't show that other corner. So I had to make all that up. I don't know what's over there.
I thought it was a nice detail. I assumed it was from the show because it tied into his background. But no, good ad.
No, this is all, again, I've watched all these episodes at least 3 or 4 times at this point because like I'm just desperately like, what does this look like? So there's a point where they go into an airlock, and I didn't know what the the airlock doors looked like. And so the screen caps that I was using didn't actually catch that moment. And so I was like watching it and trying to pause it at the exact moment that the airlock doors opened so I could see so it's like, it's an airlock. So there's like the internal doors and the external doors. So I could see the internal doors, but I needed it to open so I could see how the external doors look like from the inside. No one cares about this, but I swear to God, I watched that thing like 30 times to get it paused in the right spot so I could get a screen cap just so I could watch that one thing. Anyway.
So is that the scene where they're going to throw Dracula at the alien vessel?
Yeah, exactly. They're getting on the suits, and like I needed to know what all that looked like. And the suits are actually inside the airlock too, so I needed to know what that looked like too. So like this is how anal I am with this stuff. I'm like literally like, okay, well this is here and this is how it looks here, so I have to make it as close as humanly possible. For most people, I feel like would just be like, yeah, I just drew an airlock door that looks kind of Star Trek-y. What's wrong with you?
It's funny.
It's totally worth it.
That scene, though, because it ends with Cerritos going to warp, right? While 3 of the Warp Core 4 are floating near its hull. And I feel like being that close to something that's warping space around it can't be good for you. I feel like they would be ripped to shreds by, like, tidal forces or something.
Sure.
It begs the question, how far out does the warp field extend around the Cerritos, right? Like, they just barely...
It extends enough to where Boimler was fine.
Yeah, that's right. He's fine, right?
I feel like they wouldn't want people standing on the hull, though, when they go to warp. Like, that would be a huge...
That's why you make sure the inertial dampers handle that.
I'm sure it's not healthy for him. So...
Boimler's been through a lot, man. He's sustained a lot.
It's the 24th century. Really they have super medicine, and it's not.
That's right. They turn someone back from a puppet into a person.
Right.
That's true.
Boimler will be fine.
Get some anti-rad medication, and everything's good.
That's right.
Janeway was a literal lizard, and she's fine.
That's right.
Yeah. But haven't we all been a lizard at some point in our life?
It depends on how much I drink, but yeah.
Oh boy, I think we're getting off track here.
Yes, let's get back. I want to mention some other stuff about some of the main cast that have some I don't know, screen time, presence on the page.
Well, the page is on my screen because I'm reading it digitally, so screen time works.
Yes. Oh, I see. My terminology is all jacked up then. But talking about Freeman a bit, my favorite bit there is she canonizes the making the mid-crisis log entry via commbadge, like while horrible things are happening. That's pretty solid.
Well, if you're about to die, you want to leave a record.
That's true. hopefully somebody recovers her commbadge, and you know,
Yeah, you
take
gotta
it
know
from there.
why you died.
They've got to know. And then lastly, Dr. Ta'ana.
Oh God.
You know, some questionable judgment by Captain Freeman there.
You know, I'd rather just forget that ever happened.
Maybe we should. I wasn't going to. Yeah. Well, first off, let me say that why would you bring her ever on a diplomatic away mission? I feel like that's just such a bad idea.
Awesome.
Not built for diplomacy.
Yeah. I mean, she is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but you know, but I don't know. You're talking about the furry joke.
I don't want to talk about the furry
I'll
joke.
let you talk about that one.
It is very well written, but like, I just love the creeping dude. Is just, oh wow, it's
Do it
just
as a joke. Yeah.
What? Something awakened in him.
Yes.
Don't kink shame.
You know what? I'm not here. Yeah, it's true. I'm not here to kink
Yeah.
shame. I mean, I'll always find furries weird, but you know, to each their own. I love how everybody else is just kind of looking at him as he's like really excited about this, and they're like, what, dude?"
My one addition to that was everybody else is looking at him like he's crazy, except there's one dude in the back.
Oh,
He's
he's
like-
got the smile. Yeah, the smile.
I get it, man.
He's all
I
like,
get it.
yeah.
So anyway,
That was solid. You know, some of the other ones are probably acting. You know, it
you
can be
know,
pretty common. Who knows?
you let your freak fly, but you know, there's always at least one other. Or there's always at least one other.
You're absolutely right. Let's see. Any other of the main cast? I think like everyone gets a little something. Shaxs we kind of already talked about as his like, you know, gleeful beating up of the Yentoa that like is only rivaled by the actual ejection of the warp core.
Yes.
That most
I
recent
love
season
that.
of
I do
the lower
love
decks.
Freeman's facial expression when he's going to town. She's just like, okay.
You see
Oh no,
Tana's
she's
expression
into
though.
it.
when
She's all like, yeah,
she's
that's
doing
my
it.
man.
She's getting a little
Yeah.
revved up there.
Yeah. My headcanon for that
That
was
was great.
like when they're going down on the like to the planet, like Ta'ana and Shaxs. This is total headcanon, so no one wrote this in the script. I was just looking like they're
Sure.
kind of on the rocks, like they might have fought or something before they got in the ship or something.
Sure.
And then once like he like beat the crap out of all those people, she was like, "Oh yeah, I get it."
I love the Hannibal Lecter style restraints that go on.
That
Shaxs.
was also a me addition.
That's funny.
It-
And like my
it was
first
so
read
good.
through, I never made the connection, right? And I don't know why, because it's very obvious. Like the further into you go, because like initially you're seeing him like half obscured or from the back, and like,
Right.
but by
Kind
the
of
third
back, yeah.
comic, it's just you very clearly see it. But for some reason, I was not picking up on that art angle there.
You know, he's only shown like that like 2 or 3 times or something.
Yeah,
So and he's never really the focus
Yep.
of any of the panels. So like it's very easy to miss. It
Yeah.
wasn't intentionally like that. Like I didn't intend for people to kind of miss it. But I was reading through again because, you know, that's what I do. I draw things and then I go through and I read through again and I'm like, oh, I'm so good. I'm so awesome. Yeah,
Makes
but
sense.
sometimes, you know, you do that because you're like, oh, I missed a pip there. I got to go fix that. But, like, I was reading through and I was like, oh, yeah, it's not front and center the way I kind of thought it would be, but it's still pretty funny. So, oh, well.
yeah. I mean, especially since like the views of him restrained like that are so spread out, right? It's
Yeah.
the same scene, but like they're 10 pages apart.
Yeah.
It's pretty well done.
You know, the fact that it's the Qvanti that restrained him, like they must have like seen Shaxs beat up like 20 Yentoa guys and just watched and then showed up and then we're like,
Yeah.
okay, we gotta restrain Shaxs. Just put that.
I mean, it was more than 20. I think
The whole
I
town,
drew those
man.
pages.
Is do you have a body count there?
I think I sat down.
They all showed up. That
I
castle
think I
empty.
sat down and counted how many people were on those pages once because I was like, why are these pages taking me so long? Oh, because in these 2 pages, there's 30 people. What is wrong with me?
You know, I appreciate the sacrifice because you got to show Shaxs at his best in his
Yeah,
element.
well, my wife is less
Gotta appreciate
stoked. She's like, "Are you ever gonna stop working?
Why aren't you
Yeah,
sleeping?
why aren't you sleeping? Go to bed. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Qvanti, though, were the Qvanti your design, or was that something you were given?
I think it was my design. I think it said something about them being blue or something. I don't remember. But it was, I don't know. It was kind of like I need an alien. Like I didn't think about it too much. I was like, they have weird ears and head ridges, and that's pretty Star Trekky.
Yep.
They're a weird color.
Yeah, I mean they definitely fit in with Foreheads of the Week from the series.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was going for. And honestly, that's kind of what they do on Lower Decks too. I don't know how much they go into like extreme designs, especially if it's just going to be like a background character or something.
And that's something a lot of the newer series are doing. They're trying to create more out there aliens, like Strange New Worlds has really updated the Gorn look. You see, Saurians you'd seen before, but they're, front and center, and they have a new design in Discovery.
With Strange New Worlds, I thought the Gorn design, it was really bold that they took the wire mesh out of their mouth. I thought that was a really integral part of their original design from the original series. Sorry.
Nope, it's all good.
Yeah. You guys are probably just like sitting there like, what is he talking about? Oh.
No, yeah. There's a brief moment where you're like,
we got there.
What?
We got there.
Come on.
Oh, come on, man. Come on.
I think the loss of the slow punch is really just, I mean, you can't be Gorn if you don't move, at a glacial pace.
I tried to do a TOS rewatch, and I was watching that episode, and I was like, what? Did Shatner never get in a fight with anyone?
Yep.
What is going... Did he never, watch a boxing match, once?
But that's a big thing that you see in Star Trek, is just their weird melee combat scenes. The double hand punch, the
double kicks.
And it's like, I get what they're going for with it, but it's like, man, if you don't have the physicality to do a really good flying kick, just don't do it. You just look ridiculous.
Yeah. And I don't know. I was just like, why? Why is this so bad, dude?
Yeah, it's a lot of TOS, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hey, that's classic. It's classic.
It got us to where we are today, so can't complain too much.
Like I said, it's hard to go backwards. Like, I think I watched Enterprise before I watched Voyager. And Enterprise came out, a few years later. The CG was more put together. Like the design or the set designs and the alien makeup and stuff just looked a little bit better.
Voyager was very all over the place in its quality, right?
Yeah.
Like that, the original pilot was it had this movie quality to it. It was such high production values, great concepts, good story, good acting, visuals were great. And then every episode after that is a TOS Planet of the Hats episode. And you're like, what is going on here?
Yeah. The one that struck me was there's in one of the later seasons, there's a alien creature thing that they keep running into, and it was all CGI.
Oh yeah,
and
no.
They just reuse the same 30-second clip or 5-second clip of it again and again, episode after episode. And I was just like, yeah, this was not meant to be binged. This was meant to be watched.
Creature CG in Voyager was not great.
Yeah.
No, and then they're for TOS, they've updated all the space fights and all the space stuff now too. It's paper mache sets, and then you have this, kind of competently put together 3D model, and I'm like, huh? Why didn't they just, if they had the technology, why didn't they just do this with the rest of the show? This doesn't make sense.
I'm willing to bet that we'll see AI bots that can take a series and upscale it to look modern eventually. It'll be interesting to see once that sort of tech rolls out.
I just don't want them to. I think things just kind of have to sit in their own timeline.
Yeah.
It's part of the issue with the Star Wars special, not to reopen 20-year-old wounds at this point, but the special edition stuff, I think it did a good thing in the sense that it made the prequels and the original trilogy, they feel more uniform, But the problem with it is just those those were made at a point in time when they had a certain level of technology and they had flaws and they had all this stuff. Why not just? I know it looks cheap now, but like just keep it, or at least have some way to where people can see it, even if it's only for like the hyper nerd curious person.
The erasing the old versions is kind of weird, right? You kind of want to sometimes just want to see what the old one was like.
Yeah. And so many of the additions, like they changed the editing, they did a lot of weird stuff, not just Han shooting first. Like they did a lot of weird stuff in the special editions, especially on that first movie that changed it a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
And like in some parts, it's not even really the same movie. But
discussion for another time. I'm going to try and reel us back to talk about
what's going on here, Stavros?
Comics in a second there.
Supposed to be keeping us on task here, buddy. Not even talking about Star Trek anymore. We're talking about Star Wars.
I know.
Long podcast? I'm sorry.
I know. But no, we've covered a whole lot about the comics. I don't know, Chris, do you kind of go over to you? Did we miss anything obvious that you really liked about the comic that we haven't really talked that much about, or any opinions I have that I'm completely wrong about?
Well,
anything like that?
The collars on the capes are the exact same height in every panel. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have no idea. No idea where he's getting that. I'm sorry, dude. I think he's just trying to take you down a peg because he can't do artwork.
It's all right.
Wow. Maybe that is true. I can't do art.
Not really. I mean, I drew the series, so everything in there is kind of my baby. But you guys are talking a lot on issues 2 and 3, but not a lot on like issue 1, the holodeck stuff.
Yeah, the Enterprise bridges. Even I assume that was a lot of work to recreate all those bridges.
Yes. Oh my god. Yes. I had to figure out what they all look like, and then they all had to be shot from the same angle. And yeah, that was a lot of work. And you know what? The bridge of the Enterprise from Enterprise, like the very first one, I forget what it's called, before the one, like the ABC designations, not
You're talking about the NX one? Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah.
It changes.
It changes throughout the series. Yep, they redress it midway through.
Mm. Do you know how frustrating that is to find reference? And you're just like, I need a picture of this bridge, and it's like it changes. Yep. And then I looked up screen caps, and there's no real good screen caps, just of the bridge. Anyway, so I drank a lot that day.
That briefing room, is it the briefing room at the back just kind of disappears one day, or what are the changes? Am I reopening wounds here?
No, I don't even know. Like they changed the color of it, and then like certain like girders, like steel bars, like appear and disappear, and like.
If I recall correctly, originally there was a bunch of like stand-up displays around the bridge, and there was like a slightly different layout to like the comm chair that later became like the science chair, and they just changed a whole bunch of that. I think it was like in the Xindi arc, I want to say.
I don't remember.
Where they just pulled out a lot of those. They're basically like columns, right, throughout the bridge, and I think they kind of wanted to create this.
There's columns.
Yeah, they wanted to create a feeling of this low tech, right? Like these are, like modern. I don't even know how to describe it. I think they're
not like columns; they're like scaffolding. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. And like some of them have display screens on them, and I think the idea they were going for was they wanted it to feel claustrophobic and like kind of like this isn't a top of the line starship built on these design schemes that have been laid out for generations now. This is like it was put together and things had to be changed because they didn't really work and all that stuff.
Yeah, but it just makes it really hard to make it identifiable as the bridge when the bridge that is not identifiable in and of itself.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like the TARDIS. It like changes by season by season.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, sounds frustrating. Well, you know what I really loved about that scene was the 7 little mini Enterprises.
Yeah, that was another thing that made me want to kill myself. It made me want to, drink a lot.
You know what? I don't know if it's the coloring or like I kind of wanted to call them like little chibi proportions or something. Like on some of them, the secondary hulls are like kind of cutely big or something. I desperately want high res versions.
Oh.
Do they exist?
I probably have them on my my computer somewhere.
They're great.
But
I love them.
yeah, I'll send you the high res for my Dropbox. I think it's literally like 300 megabytes or something.
That's about right. I love it.
Yeah, that was tough too, because some of those ships, I think it's the C, the one from yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't have very many shots of that one.
Yeah, it's kind of, they call it the Forgotten Enterprise.
Yeah. It's literally in that episode and really doesn't show up ever again, as far as I know.
Which is weird, because they did a whole ship model for it, and they have tons of episodes where there's other ships they encounter. You think they would have reused it, but they never do.
Yeah. Not really. And I got to tell you, that's a really cool looking ship too.
Isn't one of the initial designs for the Enterprise D?
Yes, I don't think so. I think it took elements from like some of the original concept art, but I think it was its own ship.
But I really like that one because it has these big fat nacelles.
Yeah,
I just thought they were cool looking. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's great. Have you done a lot of, I don't know what to call it, I guess ship art is sort of its own field, right? It's
Nope. Big secret. I hate drawing technology. And those are not models. Those ones are not models. I painted those.
They're just painting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's some dedication.
Yeah. That was a lot. By the way, B, the Excelsior, that's an ugly ship. Looks like
Thank you.
Nobody
agrees with me on this. They're like, the Excelsior.
We're gonna make the internet
is
mad
wonderful. It's the best design in all of Star Trek, and I'm like, it's garbage. It's bulgy in all the wrong ways. It looks like a plucked goose. Oh, it's horrible.
I feel like if Starfleet was like, "Hey, we're gonna relaunch the Love Boat," that's the ship that they would use.
They would go with. Oh, man.
It is like the most weirdly put together, just ugliest ship, and I'm just like, why?
It works for the original concept when it first appeared. It was this experimental testbed vehicle, and it visually sells that. But then it becomes the next Enterprise, and you're like, oh no, it's horrible looking. But people love it.
Awful.
And it shows up all the time too. It shows up in Next Gen.
It's like a workhorse of the fleet, and I hate it.
Right.
Yeah, and then I don't really care for the E either. Not my favorite ship.
All right, get right the fuck off my podcast.
Sorry.
Actually, that's not true.
No.
I'm a D guy. D is by far my favorite Enterprise.
D's my friend. I like D. D's my. That's weird to say it like that, but I like the Enterprise D. Yes, that's better.
Yes.
There we go. Can
we cut that out, please?
Yeah.
Nope, that's going right up on Twitter. Thank you.
Yeah, no, like I think there's solid. It's because a lot of the issue 1 is the Dixon Hill Enterprise hologram scene. So
and by the way, a lot of reference went into that stupid office too.
Yep.
Oh yeah, the Dixon Hill office. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as far as like variety of locations, like the first issue must have been like a nightmare to draw compared to the subsequent ones.
It's a lot, dude. I mean, because it's like it starts with bridge, and then it goes to like the Dixon Hill thing, and then they do like she pops out with all 7 of the Enterprises, and then like they do 3 different bridges of different Enterprises, and then they go to Old London, which also is heavily referenced from that Moriarty episode. And that's not even including like coming up with stuff for the Qvanti world and the planet itself and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, that was a very hard issue to draw just based on like reference and like all that stuff. And like I said, again, like all this stuff I'm meticulously researching because I want it to look right. I don't want it to look like something I made up. I want it to feel like something that would be in Star Trek. And like when Lower Decks does it, they have a whole team of people doing backgrounds and stuff. And when I do it, it's me and my laptop and probably some podcast.
And some approvers that want to tell you look over your shoulder too. I'm sure it helps.
Yeah. But I'll be honest though, like the Trek fans have been really good. Like I've only had like one or two people and be like, "Hey, this is kind of a weird thing. Is this canon? The colors on the capes are. Is that one's higher than the other? Is that canon? Is that but in general,
never gonna live this down." Oh, that's great. I think, I mean, seriously, the attention to detail, I mean, like we said right at the beginning of the show, like all of this looks straight out of the show.
I do love the fact that the comic series even has a cold open. It's a comic book.
Yeah.
But they still did a cold open anyways.
Good. Again, that's all Ryan, man. It's all Ryan. He's a legit genius.
So do you think this is going to be a backdoor pilot here? You think they're going to do more of this?
How do you mean? Like more Lower Decks?
More Lower Decks comics?
Oh, yes. I think they will do more Lower Decks. And that is all I will say.
Ooh. We're skirting on NDA territory here, but I can't. We can't say no to more Lower Decks comics.
It's not NDA so much, but I think my editor has a sniper trained on my window.
Oh,
it's like
that's
a little red dot
yeah.
actually on my forehead, and I don't know where it's coming from.
The second you say the wrong thing, yeah,
so
probably not good.
But yes, I think they will do more Lower Decks, and that is all I'm going to say.
Okay. Glad to hear it.
I mean, it did really well, and people seem to really like it. So, yeah.
I hope there's a lot of people like me out there where they haven't, well, not Cake criticizing me, but, non-comic book me who's, not really into reading comics, but they're going to get into it for the, because it does look legit, like I said, and it sells it. So
again, that was kind of the point. Like, I didn't want...
Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys aren't like super comic guys, but like a lot of times you get these licensed books, especially for Star Trek, where
a lot of them are not great.
They're not good, but
is it art wise or
they don't,
or both?
They don't feel like the shows, right? That's what I get.
Feel like
from
the
it.
shows, and you can kind of tell. And this hasn't really been with IDW, but like the license has been DC, it's been with Marvel, it's been all over the place, but like. You can kind of tell they just hired a random artist, and the artist either was not that interested in Trek, or some of it was like when they were drawn in the mid 90s or something. There wasn't all that reference that was easily attainable. It just sort of didn't feel. It never really captured the show, and that was my whole goal from the word go. It was like, I want this book to be as close as I can possibly get it to the show. I want people to walk in the store, look at it on the shelf, and be like, that is as close as they could get it. Like, that is the show, as best as this one dude on his laptop could get it. And this is both I say that both for praise and as a defense.
Well, and I mean, like, it really does succeed on that front, on just about every level. The layout of the story, like I said, is very much the structure you would see in an episode. The artwork is very on point as far as being the same basic style as the show, even in like details. And then the writing, like they really do capture the voice of the characters very well.
And again, like I don't think that's anything that I ever said directly to Ryan or he ever said directly to me. But like when I read that first outline, I was like, no, this is the tone of the show. He's doing the show. And so that's what we have to do. We have to do the show, or else it's not going to work. If it sounds like the show but doesn't look like the show, it's not going to work. If it looks like the show but doesn't sound like the show, it's not going to work. It has to be as close as we could get it. And yeah, I think that was just kind of an unspoken goal that everybody sort of had from the word jump.
Yeah, successfully done.
Indeed.
Is there anything else that we neglected to mention, Chris, that you want to draw our attention to?
I mean, I could go panel by panel if you want. I mean,
yeah, I'm not sure that's strictly speaking necessary.
There's a lot of stuff on that castle I want to point out.
Oh, yeah. All the details, yeah.
Nah, man, I think you guys have covered it. Yeah.
We went pretty in-depth there.
Well, Chris, do you want to tell people on the internet how to get a hold of you if they want to and tell you about how all the capes are, in fact, the same size?
So, all right, not to make this long podcast longer, but I did another cover for the 400th Trek issue, and it was like all these characters. I think it was like 26 characters drawn in like Lower Deck style on this cover. And it's a bunch of jokes and a bunch of weird stuff like Shaxs and Worf like arm wrestling and stuff. And one of them is Tom Paris like hugging on the Borg Queen. And I literally got messages on Twitter, and they were like, "Why would you do this to Tom Paris? He's very devoted to B'Elanna Torres."
No.
And I was just like, I promise she's not going to be mad. They don't exist. These are not real people. I swear to you, she's not going to care in the least.
People get really passionate about.
I got like
these
4 or
things,
5 of these people like coming at me for this, and I was like,
"Yikes!
God,
Yikes!
no
Yikes is
way."
right. Jesus.
Anyway, so if you want to yell at me for making Tom Paris hang out with the Borg Queen, it's at Chris Fenoglio on pretty much everything: Instagram, Twitter, Mastodon, I guess. I don't know. I don't use that anymore. Or Hive, whatever.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you giving us the inside look on how a lot of this stuff was done. It's definitely well done. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Aaron, I think we're close to being done here.
We'll never be done, Stavros. Never.
Not as long as the show's still in the air. At least.
It's going to be on the air for all of time. Someday we'll be old men sitting in a retirement home, teeth and glasses as we gum into the mic. But in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at Lower Dorks. Or if you're so inclined, you might be able to find one Stavros with his art set. If you ask him, he might just draw you like one of his French girls.